Absolutely. Matt, thank you. Matt Dathan, Home Affairs Editor at The Times.
Let's speak to Brendan Clarke-Smith, who's a Conservative MP for Bassetlaw. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
What do you make of this? What do you make of the role of the European Court of Human Rights in this decision?
Well, it's very frustrating. I'm not completely surprised by this. Of course, there's a lot of time and money that's sort of been wasted along the way because of it. But of course, what we have to remember is this is an appeal. They haven't found against the government, and I'm still confident that when it comes back, they'll find in favour of the government and the legislation's actually watertight.
Does it make you want to argue for the case of coming out of the European Convention on Human Rights?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you go back to the 1950s when we signed up to this convention, there's a lot of fair stuff in there, freedom of expression, right to a fair trial, the kind of things that we'd all agree on. But the 1998 Human Rights Act came in the Blair era, and we feel it's been gold-plated now. So you have this kind of left-leaning sort of woke judges interpreting it, over-interpreting it. And really, I think we need to reform this. So we need our own Bill of Rights, I think, and not necessarily throwing the baby out with the bathwater, but I think there does need to be some reform there.
If you have a Bill of Rights, which I know Dominic Raab wants to do, would you still accept the jurisdiction of the European Court of Human Rights? I guess that's the question.
Well, I think we need to make our own laws and have our own courts, and I think that was a major part of taking back control. And I think even in this case, we've had 3 British courts now. We've had the High Court, the Court of Appeal, and of course the Supreme Court, which is supposed to be supreme, but at the moment, whilst we're in that, isn't, I would say. So I think we should decide our own laws and we should have our own courts. That doesn't mean we can't uphold the basic principles of human rights, but I think we should be doing it on our own terms.
I guess the problem with that is, as you try and unpick, as you say, 50 or 60 years of this, there's things like the Good Friday Agreement, I think that your government's very keen to uphold, actually has adherence to the European Convention of Human Rights and the court system written into it. So you'd have to try and unpick the Good Friday Agreement, which is probably something you don't want to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think the convention itself is not necessarily the problem. It's the legal system that it's been intertwined with, and I think in some of the interpretation of that. So that's perhaps what we're going to be looking at more than those core principles. I think, as we said, really, the core principles are not the problem. The problem is the judicial process, which I think has been abused, has been overused, and is really used as a delaying tactic.
Is this a moral policy, in your view, Brendan Clarke-Smith? And what do you make of people like all of the bishops, really, in the Church of England saying this is fundamentally the wrong thing to do? These are vulnerable people. They've come to our country seeking help. That's one of the great traditions of British life, is that we help the vulnerable, and instead we're trying to send them on to a place that many people feel is not the right place to be sending people who are escaping totalitarian regimes.
Yeah, I think the fact of the matter is people are drowning in the Channel and people are dying. We've got to do something about that. We've got to tackle the people smugglers. And I know there's a lot of critics, but the only solution that they seem to have are completely open borders, which is, of course, not something that's going to work either. But I mean, what I would say to the bishops, it's very easy for people who don't have to deal with the effects of mass uncontrolled immigration. I don't think they have a problem seeing a doctor or getting kids into school and all of these things. So I think when you bring it down on the individual level, we need to have a sensible policy. But, we're still a welcoming country. You look at all the stuff we've done with Ukraine. We took a lot of people from Afghanistan, from Syria. So we're still a welcoming country, and I wouldn't want us to change that. But at the same time, there need to be some limits on it. And I think that we've got the balance about right.
But have you got it right, I suppose, with this policy? Because you've not been able to do it, first of all. There's going to be still legal wranglings to come. We don't know where they will lead. And even if yesterday there were 400 people in boats crossed the Channel, there's no sign that this policy actually will work.
Well, of course, the flight hasn't gone yet, and really it's going to be a deterrent. Now, do I think we're going to be sending tens of thousands of people to Rwanda? No, but I think the possibility that it's there will act as that deterrent. It's worked in places like Australia before, and I think it will work in this case as well. And, of course, a lot of people have really got this idea about Rwanda, how terrible it is. We have football teams advertising tourism there. People have seen some of the shots of Rwanda. The accommodation's very good. People are going to be well treated there. It's a booming economy. It's the Silicon Valley of Africa. So I think also that we need to give Rwanda a bit more credit than they're actually being given.
That point is well argued there. The counter argument, I suppose, would be this: that it's also still, to a large extent, a police state. The government, the opposition leader, is in detention. People have disappeared there. It's not welcoming to people who are gay, for example. Many of whom may be fleeing other totalitarian regimes who are gay. You can see why people are a bit concerned in that area.
Of course, and we've obviously got checks and balances to make sure that people are treated well. But what I'd also say, of course, is a lot of people have passed through safe countries. They've come through Germany, they've come through France, all of which perfectly decent places to live. Now, I'm not against anybody making a better life for themselves, and I think it's great people do want to come to the UK. I think it's a sign of how successful we are. But when it comes down to it, when you're an asylum seeker, being safe is the number one thing there. The economic side is a choice. So I think it may discourage people, and we may actually get a fairer distribution because of it.
Brendan Clarke-Smith, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
That's Brendan Clarke-Smith, the Conservative MP for Bassetlaw.